Hi guys, and welcome to today's video where we'll be talking about enrichment for your leopard geckos, both physical and mental. You see, I get a lot of comments asking like, how do I play with my gecko? My gecko looks bored, how do I entertain it? Can I use a hamster ball with it, or can I use an exercise ball? Like anything like that, any of those toys for other animals, avoid. They're not designed or safe for reptiles. Please do not use them. Now, unfortunately, at this point, I do not believe leopard geckos play like other pets, like cats and dogs, for example. And if we look at, say, how a cat plays, they're actually just practicing their hunting skills. So, chasing prey, creeping up on it, pouncing on it. So, we're really tapping into that wild side of them. But also, like, no tea, no shade, but cats are probably more intelligent than leopard geckos, so therefore they need more mental stimulation. So anyway, with all this in mind, what is the one basic thing we can do that can mentally and physically stimulate our leopard geckos? We should allow them to hunt down their food. So in the wild, leopard geckos would have to find and hunt down their food. I imagine, like a lot of insectivores, they'd probably be opportunistic hunters, so if they see an insect, they're going for it. And though in captivity, food dishes can be helpful with keeping food in one place, it's probably better to get your gecko moving around its tank and chasing its food down. Now obviously, with food like locusts and crickets, they are fairly fast moving in comparison to mealworms or waxworms, so when feeding worms to my geckos, I'd put one in one spot. Once a gecko has got that one, I'll put one in another place, so the gecko has to actually move to get its food. It's important as well that when you're putting this food in different places, that the gecko can see it, because I believe they rely on sight more than scent. Like, I could hide a mealworm and honestly I don't think my gecko would notice. So get your geckos moving, hunting down their food, getting that little bit of adrenaline rush and doing what they'd naturally do in the wild. Now obviously, depending on your gecko's age, they may not be fed every day. So what can you do for your geckos to keep them entertained on a daily basis? Make their tank interesting. So they probably won't acknowledge whether or not they have an expensive water dish or anything. I really don't think they care, but what they will appreciate is places to hide and climb and dig and different textures to walk on. So let's break this down for a second. So things to climb. Leopard geckos don't need anything drastic like arboreal lizards. They don't need tall tanks with massive tree stumps to climb, but giving them a range of things to climb, whether that be like hides or driftwood, rocks, or even fake rocks, it all adds to their physical enrichment and allows them to explore different aspects of their tank. We saw some amazing setups in my React videos. These are great examples of bringing different heights and textures to your gecko's tank. As well as places to climb, they also need places to hide. This is essential. They need to feel safe and secure in their tank, otherwise they'll always be on edge. And the other aspect that I personally think is a massive piece of enrichment that not everyone will agree with is having substrate that they can move. I use earth mix arid, and in the past I've used eco earth. I've always seen my leopard geckos dig, whether that's because they're laying eggs or they just want to move their dirt or even creating their own tunnels. Now I think I've mentioned this before, but once I was coming around the corner in my room and I think I must have accidentally spooked Minnie, and in a split second she had moved across her tank, cleared some dirt from under a rock, flattened herself under this rock and hidden. I imagine that's something they would do in the wild. It's an instinctive response to a threat. I think that's pretty amazing that she can do that and feel secure and calm down straight away. Now I understand that loose substrate isn't for everyone, but you can always section off a part of the tank so they have something to dig in. Some people even use these exoteric caves that they will use as a shed and hide and put some loose substrate in it. So there's still some potential for digging, but yeah, you don't have to do it, it's just up to you, but I definitely see it as a massive positive to my gecko's mental and physical health. Now another thing I think is good at getting them exercising and bonding with you is handling your gecko. So this can be like an added piece of exercise. You can just get them out, walk hand to hand or up your arm. Personally, I wouldn't put them on the floor. I know some people ask about that, but even the tamest of my geckos get spooked. I think the area is just too open and we look massive to them. So I would say just keep it to walking on your hand or even on your bed or sofa. That can be okay. But obviously make sure there's nowhere they can fall off and there's no other animals around. But it's good to get them out exploring and exercising. Now this last enrichment tip may seem a little odd, but hear me out. It's UVA, so ultraviolet A. So no doubt you've probably heard of UVB, but most UV lights do also produce UVA. I have spoken about this in another video, but always buy UV lights from decent brands and not cheap unbranded ones from places like China, because they can leak dangerous wavelengths like UVC, and if you Google UVC you'll know you don't want to expose your reptiles to that. Anyway, back to UVA. So studies have actually found that reptiles exposed to UVA not only can see colours and patterns different to us as they have an extra dimension to their vision, but they also tend to have higher activity levels, hunt better, and are more inclined to bask and breed when UVA is present. It's kind of interesting to me that when you introduce UVA, you kind of unlock this feature in a gecko's vision that, or any reptile for that matter, that they have in the wild, but once brought into captivity and are not exposed to those wavelengths of UVA, it kind of just goes. So I just imagine it like bringing colour back to a gecko's life. I know they obviously see some colour, but you know what I mean, like it just unlocks this extra feature in their vision. And I think it's really interesting and definitely beneficial. Now, a final thought I'd like to add here just before I finish is something I may do in the future, and I've mentioned this in my video, I think when I was reacting and correcting a past video of mine, and I said about maybe introducing a deep heat projector for my leopard geckos. I already use one for my crested geckos, but the deep heat projector actually does more than a ceramic heater or even a heat mat. And I'm wondering, if it's projecting over an area of the gecko's tank, will this encourage the gecko to actually move more and use more of its tank? Because I know, like myself and other fellow leopard gecko owners, our gecko spends a lot of its time on a heat mat, so it might be interesting to see if the deep heat projector actually allows it to come out more and doesn't restrict it to just the heat mat area. I don't know, that's just a bit of food for thought before we go. Anyway, I'd love to hear what you think, or something you do for your geckos to keep them entertained, or maybe you have another reptile that actually needs a lot more physical and mental stimulation. Leave your comments below, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. You're very much welcome here. But thank you for watching, guys, and goodbye.